What did I get myself into? It's winter, there's nice light everywhere. It's nice to be outside. I'm a bit scared of this challenge. I'm not really sure what to expect of it. At least I found my subject for today. Um, and I'm just gonna get right into it. I'm still having the same gear. I'm not gonna be showing it every single time, but at least you guys know what I'm using. Now, when I'm sketching, I also have to think about the format where I'm painting, which is a squared page. So therefore, I have to crop my reference picture. What interested me of this scene was that very long shadow, and also like the very big shape that the trees and the house and the shadow of the trees makes. So it makes it a very good first subject for this challenge of painting 100 days on plein air. I mean, it is quite scary, especially because the original idea was just to do 30 days. But since I've actually done 100 days of landscapes, a different series where I learned how to paint landscapes in 100 days, but digitally, I thought that it would just be a better and more challenging thing to do for 100 days than for 30 days only. And I don't know about you, but I like a good challenge. I feel like doing anything for 30 days is quite easy. Doing it for 100 days is a little bit harder, but still easy enough. I think that doing anything for example, a year, doing one thing every day for a year is quite hard. It takes a lot of dedication, a lot of discipline, and I mean, it would be amazing if I could do this for a year, but I'm not going to put that kind of pressure right now because the whole point of this challenge for me is to reconnect with the spontaneity and like the curiosity of being outdoors and being inspired by light and color and the landscapes. And yeah, so putting that kind of pressure of, okay, I have to do this for a year, and on top of that, I have to film it and edit it and voice over it for a whole year. It's quite a challenge. So therefore, I thought that 100 days is like the nice sweet spot because it's long enough for it to be a challenge, and it's short enough for it to not get too overwhelming if it becomes too hard to keep up with. That's why I had to set those sustainability strategy guidelines per se of minimum editing, just voiceovering, and a little bit of B-roll, just so it's about as easy. But we'll see. I mean, I will probably change things on the go. But now let's get more into what I'm thinking while I'm painting. I mean, the sketch part is not so interesting. Or maybe it is. I mean, you have to let me know in the comments below. But now I'm just starting with the sky. It's a very bright sky, so I'm trying to make it as dull as possible. In a way, I don't want it to take too much of the attention. I'm sorry that my head is in the way. The putting the tripod in a way that I could paint myself, film myself painting was kind of challenging. I couldn't actually see the frame. I could only see it after I sat down. I stopped the video and then checked it. So I was kind of hoping that this whole video was in frame. So you'll just have to excuse that for a bit. And also, you'll notice that I forgot my rag to dry my brush with. So I'm just using my pants for now. I mean, these are some old jeans, so it's okay. Now I'm trying to paint the light right in front of me, the part where it was most bright. It's very beautiful, dreamy light that we saw in the beginning when I chose my composition and also started sketching. I mean, you probably already know this by now, but I'm sick, and that's why I sound so bad. But I still wanted to start this challenge because it's good to start when you're excited and inspired. It's not good to put things off, especially when you're gaining momentum. So I thought, you know what? This might be my medicine, so I'm gonna try to do it anyway. Now, what I'm trying to do is the background mountains. Um, so you can't really see much. I mean, the notebook is quite far away, but it's okay. Now you see me there, drying my brush in my pants. It's quite hilarious. The good thing is that there was nobody around, so nobody saw this weird guy painting and then um drying his brush on his pants. Now I am gonna be moving down to the lower corner, which is still far away. I'm using my creative license to just skip or remove or not add some detail that I see because I want to not get bugged by detail. But as you can still see me like fiddling with like small details, or I think I'm just avoiding the house since it's gonna be a darker red kind of bluish color. So maybe that's what I'm doing right now. I can't remember. I think it is. You can start to see the edge of that house. And I think I'm gonna move all the way closer until then I have to start doing the shade of the house. Which makes a bit of logical sense since it's like moving from the furthest object to the closest object. And in watercolor, since you go from light to dark, then it makes sense that I'm adding the lightest parts first and then a bit less light or the darkest part of the lights and so on until mid value. And yeah, I guess I opted for the trees. The trees do silhouette the house, and this is one thing that I have to start learning to see better, is that these kind of silhouettes in a shade, it doesn't really matter to silhouette the object in the middle, because I think it looks nicer in a painting when things or edges are a bit softer, and in shadow usually edges are softer, even though when we see it in real life we see them very sharp. When you communicate it with soft edges in a painting, it just gives it a little bit more light. A little bit more life, and also you can play a lot more with color, let it kind of just paint itself and not really worried about everything being in the perfect place. I'm just right now adding a bit of suggestion that those are trees, because at first I just did a big shape of trees, and then I just added first the lightest tone of the tree, which was a yellow green. Now I'm adding a bit more blue on top just to suggest that there is shadow or that there's a strong light hitting the trees. And as you can see, I'm doing one of the very common mistakes that beginners make, and that is not using enough paint. I find it interesting that I'm not really a beginner, but I can still make those mistakes. And I think that's the challenge of plein air, like feeling rushed, knowing that the light is moving and that you don't have a lot of time. And I don't have a lot of time because I only give myself 15 minutes to paint this, right? And thinking and placing the right tone. But in watercolor, if you place the paint down and it looks right, then it's wrong. And that's something I learned from Andy Evenson. He said it many times in several of his videos that I found on YouTube. So it's very interesting that even knowing that, I still make the same mistake. So I'm already kind of liking the fact that I have to voice over these videos and look at myself painting, because I'm just learning to see the mistakes that I'm doing while I'm painting. And also, the reason why I'm not voiceovering or narrating as I'm painting is because it will take away some concentration and probably will make me paint even worse, because I'm thinking of what to say and I'm thinking on what to do. And since this is new to me, well, this is not my first time painting plein air, but it's still new. It's still something that I'm not really comfortable in. So it will definitely be a challenge for me to narrate and paint at the same time. And well, I mean, I guess I get to learn twice by watching myself paint and also explaining my reasoning for how I do things. That will also help me know if there's some flaw in my process. And I think we all, at the end of the day, get to learn something. And I think that's what I'm most looking for in any personal project that I do, that it doesn't only benefit me, it has to benefit somebody else. And I believe that that's where the best work I've done comes out from. When it's something that I'm very curious to do, very curious to learn and dive myself into, or really be a part of, per se. But knowing that somebody's gonna watch this video at some point in time, and they'll either be inspired to try the same thing, or they'll be learning something that I learned while doing this painting. I mean, that's just invaluable. I mean, even just, I don't know, knowing that you can dry your brush with your pants, it might be just enough for me to feel good about me sharing this video. But in any case, I am doing this challenge for myself to rekindle that spark for painting and learning new things every day. And I think that it's a big challenge to paint outside or paint directly from life and not from a photograph, which I've been doing a lot of, which is not a bad thing, to be honest. But a lot of the masters say, and a lot of the people I mean, a lot of the artists who I look up to say that the best thing that they ever did was to paint from life. So might as well get onto it now, better than later, especially when I need a little bit of a boost of confidence and just something new every day. And I'm sure that painting outdoors is gonna give me that. I don't know if you saw, but I used my nail to scratch off the window that I couldn't actually leave white. And that's a really good technique to use. Your nails as well. Use your nails, use your thumbs, use everything you have to paint. Let everything be a tool. Now I'm just moving on to adding the last bit of detail on the house, mainly the roof. I mean, I'm trying to make this to be a little bit more of a dry brush technique, but since this paper has no tooth, it's super smooth, it's kind of hard to actually get it. So I opt for just making kind of straight lines, straight marks, something simple. It's not gonna look as pretty, but that's not the point of the painting today. The point of today is to capture the impression of light and color. That is the main purpose of this challenge. And I'm happy if I get the color right, or at least the colors that I see right, but the whole painting doesn't look really well, like the composition or the form of, for example, this house doesn't look right. That's fine. I mean, I'm much more interested in knowing that I have the ability to mix the color correctly, or be able to add the colors that I see of the scene, as well as portraying the light in the right way of how strong the light was. And now I'm adding a bit of more shadow on the grass of the football field, or the soccer field, I should say, just to be able to emphasize a bit more the strength of the light of that scene. And I mean, now that I see it from afar and not actually painting it, I can see that I didn't do a really good job, for example, with the trees, but we already went through that, which the mistake was I am not using enough paint, therefore I'm not painting opaquely enough, therefore the sense of light is not as we saw it in the scene where I show the house and the soccer field being lit by this side light. And if at any point anything I say does not make any sense, it might be because I had to pause the recording because I had like to cough my lungs out, and I didn't want to do that on the mic. So I'm sorry if something doesn't make sense. Now I'm using my creative license to add something that really was there, but it wasn't on my original composition, which was that tree that is, a winter tree, meaning it has no leaves left. And I just really like those characteristics of a tree in winter, like all the branches and how they go from very thick to very thin. Now I'm trying to do the dry brush technique to add the supposed twigs, but as I said, this paper is way too thin. I mean, too smooth. Therefore, since it has no tooth, it doesn't make any gaps. And if there's no gaps, then it just looks like a very flat and untextured surface or mark. Now I'm just adding the poles of a fence that kind of marks where the property of that house starts. And this is exactly why I said I need 15 minutes only to paint, because otherwise I tried to do this and is adding the little wires that go crisscrossed. And I mean, the brush is way too big for doing that. The surface of the paper is way too smooth to do that. But anyway, here is the finished painting. Not bad for day one. It is a beautiful morning here in Norway. I mean, it was very easy for me to find something to paint today. As you can see, the nice winter light, that very nice and golden glow is just everywhere. And so I found very simple shapes to try to make my life a little bit easier on how to capture the light and the feeling that I get every time I see this kind of light, and how it like just falls on objects. There's a bit of frost everywhere. It's getting colder. It's quite cold today. It is -9 Celsius. And there is something very interesting that happens when it's cold like this with water mediums like watercolor. And you will find out soon enough. But that's what made today very interesting. Other than the fact that the sunlight is just so beautiful. I mean, I'm looking at the video now and just seeing it, how it hits on my notebook, and I was like, oh, that just gives me such a nice warm feeling inside. It's just amazing. So trying to learn from yesterday's mistakes, I tried to remember to bring my rag to, well, not use my pants as a drying rag. I still forgot it. I do not know why. I'm never this forgetful, but I guess the additional gear that I have to bring for the making the video, it's probably taking that space of that rag. But I guess it's not a biggie. It's just I mean, I can always use my pants and just wash them. That's the beauty about watercolor. It doesn't permanently stain anything unless the pigment does so. So now I'm gonna start a bit with the background. Just it was a grayish cool color, and I'm trying to make that work. But soon enough, you're gonna see something interesting happen that I did not really think about at all, even when it's this cold. Um, it's only happened to me once before, so just wait for that to happen. But look, I'm trying right now to establish more the shadows or the shadow side, and now I'm adding some of the warm side of the shadow of one of those rocks, trying to make my way into the bigger shapes and not really thinking about all the detail that I see, which is a very hard thing to do. I mean, you saw me trying that yesterday in day one with the fence and the little details of the fence, the little wires. I don't know if you've noticed already, but look at the paint. It's freezing up. And now it's becoming like slushy uh, on my paint and my palette. And as you can see, I'm struggling to actually spread any of the paint. And at this moment, I thought to myself, well, maybe I should just stop and like call it a day. I mean, I did paint, right? But I was like, no, let's try to learn from this. Let's try to actually move through this. Maybe if I use more paint, maybe if I don't use that much water, then it won't freeze. I'm still trying to block in the first wash of the paint, and you can see I'm trying to um, just thaw the already frozen paint, and it's just getting worse and worse. I'm thinking maybe if I use all the pigments. No, I'm kidding. I just thought if I use more pigment than water, maybe I can just salvage this. And it's turning so muddy. It's turning so undefined. But usually the first washes of watercolor are like that anyway. Like usually the first wash that you do, if you do your paintings and first doing the first layer to just get kind of rid of all the white in the paper, if that's what you want to do, and just getting all the colors that you see in the scene like more dulled out, more closer to white kind of values. This is basically what you do. You just put everything on first layer, and it doesn't look like anything most of the time. It just looks like a complete mess. And since I'm used to that, I thought that this could still be saved and it was all gonna be fine if I just don't use that much water. But you'll see what happens. I was actually surprised that the water that I had didn't freeze, but I guess it's just always moving, and I'm always moving it with when I'm rinsing out the brush. But yeah, like the surface of the paper is just almost frozen, and the paint in the palette is also frozen. So I'm kind of like trying to decide what to do next. I'm like, okay, let's go for the mid-tone, so like a thicker kind of layer for the rocks and the light. And I just really couldn't mix color, and the paint was lasting so little. Like I'm used to being able to just put paint almost infinitely, but it's never the case. I mean, I do have to reload my brush, but this felt like I was using very little acrylic paint on the brush and then trying to spread it everywhere like butter or something. It was an experience and a half, that's for sure. I'm trying to work on the very dull grass that I saw, using my trusty nails to create the illusion of highlights of the frost on the blades of grass. And it kind of worked, but also didn't. I'm still surprised that I kept fighting through this. I know I was thinking nothing's really gonna come out of this. But I wanted to show you guys that it is possible to paint in this kind of weather. It's just it just needs more preparation. I know that there's artists out there like James Gurney and Jared Callum who have painted outside in freezing weather, and both of them use different kinds of substances to make the water not freeze. For example, alcohol or something else that I can't remember right now. But yeah, I mean, there's some substances that you can use on your watercolors or the water for your watercolors to make it not freeze. Of course, I didn't think about this, and I also don't have any alcohol at home. So I think I just had to embrace what the elements had for me today and try to make the best out of it. I was like, maybe I can make something cool out of it. Maybe I can actually learn how to paint through it. And it just requires a bit more patience, but I'm definitely sure that it is possible. We just have to know that the way we are used to the medium to respond is not going to respond that way because it's a different kind of state. Like, it's solid now, or at least halfway there, and it used to be a liquid. I also just noticed that I was using a different brush today that usually doesn't carry that much water as my usual Versatil from Skoda. And I think that I'm not sure if that would have made a difference or not, but it is worth noting. Now I think I was trying to add even darker shadows, and the paint is just not giving away. It's just so frozen still, and I'm still trying to add some detail of the back rock. It's just so laughable that I'm just not giving up. Still going, still trying. Oh, it's a bit cringy for me to watch this now. But at the same time, I'm proud that I didn't give up at the sight of this problem. And if you have noticed, I am still sick. I am still under the weather. It just doesn't want to leave me. I'm not used to being sick for this long. I usually am sick once a year for like a day or two, and that's it. And now it's been almost a week, and I am so tired of being sick. It's just not very fun. One very interesting observation that we can take from today's mishap is that this actually resembles a lot a mistake from beginners when they're learning watercolor, that they don't use enough pigment, and then they also don't wait for their paint to dry or their previous layer to dry, and therefore it just looks like a complete mess. There is no contrast. It looks overworked. It looks blotchy. That's just because we don't use enough pigment, or we just don't wait for our previous layer to dry. That's something I touched on yesterday, a mistake that I was making. So I was trying to be better today, but the weather just didn't allow it. And well, that's fine, because that also serves as a proof that even people with experience in watercolor still can make the same mistakes. And I think that's something I'm loving about this challenge. I'm kind of going back to basics, even though I sometimes don't have to think about them when I'm painting indoors. But yeah, I think by this point I'm kind of giving up and thinking, yeah, that's not gonna get better. So I just stop there. Oh yeah, I almost forgot to sign the date and the number. And yeah, today's adventure was quite fun. I mean, even though it was quite cold and I'm sick and I'm out in the elements, it was still quite fun. But yeah, that was day number 2. I hope that you enjoyed this video and this little adventure. Today I ventured a little bit further than home. We went to this thing called Day's Cabin here in Norway with my girlfriend. That's her right there. These cabins are made for hikers to just take a small break or have lunch, or even, as me and my girlfriend are doing right now, shielding ourselves from the cold. And I'm also taking the opportunity to paint in here because it's a little bit warmer than outdoors. And since I didn't want to repeat what happened yesterday, I thought that this was a great idea. And this was actually an idea by my girlfriend, who ventured into wanting to join me in my outdoor adventures. Not to paint, but just to be outside and have a walk with his crazy boyfriend doing this weird challenge of 100 days of plein air painting. Today the view is kind of gray, but there's still a lot of color, and it's a quite complicated thing to portray, at least for me, that I'm not very used to painting in the outdoors and trying to deal with so much information at one time. So I opt to do a sketch that simplifies things a lot, and I just again focus on the bigger shapes. I don't try to focus on the small details of all the trees and patches of trees that I see in the distance. I just go for the mountains and the lake, which was actually frozen, as you could see in the start of the video. One thing that I've heard pros talk about, and I see that in their painting as well, is that simplification is a big thing, and even more so when you're outdoors, because you're just overwhelmed with how many things are in front of you. And also the biggest thing outdoors is that the light changes. Today is a bit overcast, so that might not happen, but I mean, the sun can still shine through the clouds and then suddenly change the scene, and it makes me want to kill myself because I actually can't correct my color decisions before then. But of course, that is the challenge of painting outdoors. And now I'm gonna start painting the sky. As always, I've tried to go from whatever is darkest to whatever is lightest. Now, you'll probably notice that I have a different palette, and that's because I wanted to test my yellow palette on this setup. I wanted the bigger mixing area to serve as a support for my canvas or the notebook, because the other smaller palette was just kind of in the way sometimes, and I just also prefer the color selection that I have on this palette. I was getting really frustrated the last times that I painted with the other palette because the yellow that I have there is not a very versatile yellow in my opinion, or for me. So I wanted to have the color palette that I found to be more versatile for me, and also that resembles the colors that I see here in the landscapes of Norway. Now, here's a sneak peek of behind the scenes of how this is filmed, brought to you by my girlfriend, who decided to take that small clip. And if you looked closely, you could see that my breath was present in the image, meaning it's still cold inside. They actually just had started warming up the cabin, so it wasn't as warm as we expected it to be. But that's okay, it's still much warmer than outdoors. So what you see me doing now is bringing the color from the sky all the way to the front, because this kind of gray, bluish, magenta, purplish, I don't know, it's just a gray. It's kind of very present everywhere in the scene right now. And that's one thing that I love about watercolor, and you've probably seen some other painters do this, which is priming their canvas. They painted a certain color, and that gives the whole painting a sort of unification. It makes everything together, because every color that you place on top kind of has that underlying layer of tone, which actually makes your paintings, I don't know, vibrate in a way. That's sort of what I was trying to do here with watercolor, but it doesn't work as well because watercolor is a transparent medium, so If you prime your canvas with a color that's too bright or too opaque, then the colors that you put on top will not really shine, or you will not get the same effect that you see other people get with oils and gouache and any other medium that you are able to paint opaquely. I'm honestly not an expert on priming, especially because I use watercolor and I really haven't experimented with this, but I have done this, what I just did, which is bringing a color that I see in the whole scene, but placing it very dull or very light. So when I paint a little bit more opaquely, the color is still there, but it doesn't overpower the color that I just put down. For example, here, now that I'm starting to place in the mountains, you can see that the gray is almost non-existent now. And this is also because of the camera. Like, I know that the color is there. I am live and seeing the color itself. I'm not looking through the camera. That's one thing that I sometimes I'm a bit sad about, that the camera doesn't actually show the colors in their full spectrum if they're not too saturated. But that's exactly the reason why painting from life is so valuable, because if you're painting from photographs or over edited photographs, or even painting from a video, you're not actually seeing all the colors that our eyes are actually able to see. I think that's why the old masters, since they painted a lot more from life, their colors had a lot more vibrancy to them. They were more true to life, but it's not because they rendered the exact color. They rendered the colors that they were seeing, or at least the relationship between the colors that they were seeing. It's a very difficult concept for me to explain because I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, but basically every single color that we see, we only can understand it in relationship to the color that is beside it. A very good and fun tool to use to understand this concept. It's actually a game that's called I Love Hue. I'll put the link to it in the description below. I have an iPhone. I don't know if it's for Android as well, but I'm pretty sure that there is similar games to that, which is basically a puzzle of color, which it's an image of gradients of color, and that's the way that you can see how colors communicate with one another. I really recommend you to check that out. Now I'm moving down to that faint reflection that you see in frozen lakes or even in water itself, but when the lake is frozen, it's the reflection is a bit more tilted towards the white of the ice because it's reflecting more of the sky rather than the body of water itself. So it is a much different way of how you have to describe that when you're painting it. Now I'm adding a bit of more color to the background because I see more color, and I saw that I was just adding very, very dull greens, and that's okay. I mean, I noticed that I wasn't using enough color, and therefore I went back into the painting. But one thing that I didn't notice until it was too late is that my paper wasn't actually drying, and that's something that I'm not used to. That the paper is not drying at all, and I already kind of have the timing down on when I can go back to a section of the painting. But painting outdoors in this weather, like cold weather, it just goes to show that you have to adapt more to the situations and be more aware of what happens in this sort of climate, for example. I mean, I am learning so much from painting outdoors every day. I really didn't imagine that it was gonna be this much. It almost feels like I'm going back to day one of painting with watercolors, and as well as having to voice over them. And I repeated that yesterday, I think, or the first day, or maybe both days. that having to voice over them and rewatch the video and try to give you guys a hint of what I was thinking at that moment really makes me reflect on my painting decisions and my painting process. And I already can tell you that in 100 days, I will probably have a much better system than the one that I have at the moment, which is basically non-existent. I did have a process which I followed when I painted indoors, but outdoors, every single day that I paint a little bit differently, and at least I can notice it. I have an idea of what I need to do, but I also don't know how to do it properly, and I'm not adapting very well to the problems. Of course, this problem of, for example, the page still being too wet, I don't have a lot of time to wait for my page to dry up, so I just have to go with the flow. But I'm sure that there is a way for me to work through these things or work more effectively. Maybe the answer is to just put a lot more paint, or not to do like the first underpainting like I used to, or paint in sections, even to not go over one section many times. And I mean, that is an actual tip, to have brush economy, meaning going through a section only once. And maybe this sort of painting style or painting experiment will push me to make the least amount of marks, especially when it's cold. So being very decisive with each stroke that I lay down, that could be actually quite revolutionary for my own painting. I mean, being able to express just about anything in the fewest amount of brushstrokes, that's kind of like a very magical thing to do. That's something that I've always admired on people that do abstract, but not abstract to the point that you have no idea what it is. It is just abstract enough for you to not see any detail, but it is realistic enough for you to understand what you're seeing. For me, as a artistic style or taste, I would really like that my paintings look sort of real, but when you actually get close to them, they actually don't look real. You're like, oh wow, you can see this big ass mark that I did with my brush, or just that it looks painterly. I don't want to make a photograph when I paint. I want to make a moment in time. I want to kind of pay tribute to the inspiration that I was given that day to sit down and admire that landscape for those 15 minutes in this example. So yeah, this makes me very excited to see what will happen in 100 days, or maybe in less time, or maybe less time, we don't know. One thing that I'm struggling a lot is working with this non-watercolor notebook. I mean, it does the job, but I am just not used to it. I'm not used to smooth surfaces of like all the things that I'm not used to. That's the biggest thing. I can see that the notebook does take water. It doesn't flow as nicely as 100% watercolor, 100% cotton paper, but it does the job. I mean, I did some sketches in Mexico when I was visiting my family, and it worked fine. I do miss the 100% cotton paper, but I also thought that it would be really cool to fill up this whole sketchbook with this challenge. I mean, this notebook has 80 pages, but as you can see, I'm only using one side of the page, so when I'm done on this side, I can just use the other side. I'm almost done with today's painting. I'm just adding a tree in the foreground to kind of make you feel like there is depth in the landscape. I wouldn't call this a masterpiece. Actually, there was a lady that came in and saw me paint and actually took a picture for a Facebook group of the municipality that built this day cabin, which is quite cool. I mean, that's the sort of thing that you would not experience if you're indoors. So this experience is starting to get some traction, get some momentum, I guess. Maybe I'll become famous locally. That wouldn't be so bad. It's nice when your community knows who you are. This is it for the painting. I mean, if you don't want to miss me falling, then I suggest you to stick to the end of the video if you have stayed this long. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you also enjoy seeing me fall right here. See you tomorrow. So today I didn't venture to the outdoors because, as you guys know, I am sick and I need to take care of my health. But that doesn't mean that the challenge stops here. It just means that I have to adapt. And the premise of this challenge is that I'm supposed to paint directly from life. So all is well. We're gonna keep going with this challenge. Today I am so glad it snowed. Snow scenes are some of my favorite scenes to paint, and in watercolor they're usually one of the easiest ones to paint because since you have to preserve the white to paint, and usually, I mean, snow is white, so you only need to paint in what is dark, and in this case, like the house is the most dark thing, so it'll probably be easy. I hope so. I do apologize in advance if there's any weird noise on the background. That's my neighbor. He's working on something and I have no idea what it is. So if there's disturbance in the force of this audio, then that's the reason why, and I'm sorry about it. So sketching in the house, I got a bit confused in my first layout of where the roof was, and I ended up trying to extend it and trying to partition it as I saw it. I think I'm just very used to painting in a much wider format, so not so much of a square format, and therefore my view or my perception of the composition gets skewed, and then I get confused and you get these kinds of mistakes. I'm sure you guys can't really see the drawing right now. You'll just have to see when I actually start laying down paint. But yeah, so far this challenge has been very rewarding, especially from the point of view of rewatching me painting and learning from my own mistakes, watching myself paint. I never really thought that this was gonna be something that I was going to get something out of, like watching myself paint, but I found it very valuable. I find it that it kind of resembles some things that I learned from climbing. I do a bit of climbing, and it's one of my other hobbies. And one thing that you learn there is that if you tape yourself and see yourself move on the wall, you'll learn a lot more than just trying and thinking about how you were actually placing a foot or where your body was in space. So I'm very fascinated by the fact that this is actually working as well for painting. That's a funny coincidence in my opinion. And I wonder if I'm gonna be learning more things that I can apply from painting to climbing and climbing to painting. That would be very interesting. Maybe I'll make a video out of that if that actually happens. I mean, I don't think that one thing like drawing and taping yourself is like enough to make a whole video out of what climbing taught me or something, because I don't know, it's just one thing, but maybe it's enough. I don't know. Let me know in the comments below if that's a video that could be interesting. Of course, I'm not gonna make that video in the next, I don't know, 95 days, because, well, I'm gonna be busy with these ones and they're already starting to be quite challenging. I thought that the voiceover was gonna take a lot less, But that's what happens when we get excited about new projects, new things. And I don't think it's a bad thing, to be honest. I think it's good to just jump in, get immersed, fail a lot, and just see where it takes you. I mean, that's the way to learn, and you learn super fast because you just hit yourself against all these roadblocks and problems and things, and so your mind goes into this solving mode in like hyperdrive, because it almost feels like it's a live or die situation. I mean, it's not, right? But you're just so excited and you want to get it done that your brain is like, all right, I'm gonna work with you, we're gonna solve these things together. And it's just a really magical thing. I mean, I'm already finding ways on how to, cut down the time that I use voiceovering or editing the videos. Even though I'm doing minimal editing on the videos, I'm still trying to find ways to use less time. I was also considering the fact of just doing 5-minute videos, and that way you only just hear me blab for 5 minutes instead of 15 minutes to 20 minutes. So there's a consideration also. If that sounds good, please let me know in the comments below, because that way I can save myself and yourself a lot of time. And yeah, but I think that also the purpose of this challenge is for me to slow down and really see and observe what I'm doing, understanding it to the core, not just throwing paint at the paper and trying to make it look pretty. No, it's really understanding what's the workings of what I'm trying to do, what other masters try to do, and their learning of their craft. I was briefly considering that maybe I should not give myself only 15 minutes to paint and just paint as long as I need to really observe the subject, to really understand the light. I did consider that for a little bit, and then just cutting down or making the videos to be time lapses so they're also not super long. But at the same time, it is just not what I intended to do, and I feel like also the time constraint is very important so I don't get caught up on the details of what I'm seeing. And if I'm just caught up in what I'm seeing, then I'll probably not improve as much as if I have this time constraint. Even though, for example, the problems that I've been struggling with, which is the drying of the paper, if I don't have enough time for the paper to dry, I mean, yes, the result is going to be limited, but learning how to work around these things, I think, is going to be much more valuable than just saying, well, I'm just going to have unlimited time and just do a painting. There's not that much of a challenge. It will be much more challenging, maybe editing it and space wise as well, if I'm gonna be filming this in 1080p or 4K. But yeah, those are some thoughts that are going through my mind. I'm sorry for rambling. Let's just get into what I'm trying to do right now. I'm just going over the sky with a very dull gray. I put a little bit of blue in it, and also magenta, and a bit of green as well. But this is my most favorite accent color, and that's cobalt teal. This is one of my absolute must-have colors for myself, for the type of landscapes I like painting, for the temperatures that I see in the landscapes. The other color that is a must for me is the quinacridone rose. That color, I just use it so much, especially here in Norway, when the sunsets and sunrises just last for such a long time because the sun is so low. It doesn't actually move that far, therefore these times of days are extended in a way. So that's very cool. Also, ultramarine blue is one of my favorite blues. I'm still looking for my favorite pairs of blues. I mean, you need, or I mean, at least I need several blues. I feel like that's one of the most used colors. That's the one that you mix with the most. I feel the one that you use the least in my case is red. I mean, I know that quinacridone rose is a red, but that red and scarlet or pyrrole scarlet, I think it's called, those two I use, but I don't use a lot of, so they just last me forever. But when it comes to blues, those just, I ran out of them very quickly because I use them a lot for making things darker, making things cooler, or just getting my greens. Anyway, enough rambling about colors. I mean, maybe it is interesting for you guys, but now you can see me. I'm trying to just add the roof tiles, I think it's called. I'm not trying to add them all. I'm just trying to hint at it, but I'm not doing a very good job because I'm almost doing every single one in a way. But yeah, I'm basically just painting what is the darkest thing that I see that is peeking through the snow. And I mean, the roof was completely full of snow, the ground was fully complete with snow, and you will see how nice suddenly when I put the orange of the house, it just suddenly kind of comes together. I found this subject to be a little bit challenging because it had a lot of detail, and I get very distracted. I just noticed that I get very distracted by detail. I don't think that the wisest thing to do right now is what I'm doing at this moment, which is adding those tiles. I mean, those are such small things that if I was to stop right here with this with what I've done, you would not really know what that is. I mean, I can't tell what it is. Of course, I know that it is a house, but that's just because I know what I was painting before I started. But if I was somebody that had no idea and just stumbled upon this video and open it right now, I'll be like, what is this guy even trying to paint, you know? And that's not a good thing. That's when you know that your plan is not working very well. This is me telling that to myself, by the way. I'm not telling you that your plan is not working. I mean, I don't know your plan or if you even have a plan. I mean, I hope that you have a plan. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're just watching me paint, and that's also cool. But yeah, anyway, I'm glad I finally started working on the house. Just watching me paint now, I was kind of getting stressed of like, oh, am I gonna even have enough time to paint this whole house if I'm moving this slowly? And one thing that also struck me or took a lot of my time was fixating on trying to get the right color that I was seeing from the house. I seem to have forgotten how to use this palette, which is very interesting because I've always used this colors and this palette for, I mean, 85 or 95% of my paintings. So I found it very weird that I just could not remember how to mix the color that I wanted. But yeah, I mean, we live and we learn. I'm sure that I'll remember soon enough. One color that I'm missing here and I don't have with me, I haven't bought it because I'm not gonna buy any new colors until I'm out of the ones that I already have, is I can't say that. Quinacridone. Oh my god, I forgot how to say that word. Quinacridone. Oh Jesus. Okay, let's just call it Queen Gold. That color is so versatile and it works so well with so many of the colors that I have. It can give you a cool yellow if you use it very lightly, and it can give you a very strong warm yellow if you use it very thickly or I mean not as runny. That is a very nice color. It makes very beautiful oranges, and for wintertime and the autumn is a very nice color to have. Now I'm adding the bush that it was right beside the house. It kind of shares a bit of the colors of the house, but it is a little bit on the brighter side. And now I'm trying to add a few shadows within the bush. And I did forget that one primary rule of bush making is that when you add the shadows, you usually put the shadows mostly at the bottom. You can use shadows on the top. Of course, rules are meant to be broken. I mean, they're just guidelines. They're not really solid laws of physics in painting, but they are usually quite right. But you have to use them with, or you should take them as a grain of salt. You should not take them as the end all be all kind of thing. I wouldn't call that a mistake in this painting, but it is something that I could have had in my mind more present. Now, the painting is still looking quite flat. I think I was being very careful of using little paint or little water because I didn't want the paper to take too long to dry. But I'm painting indoors today, so this actually was not a problem throughout the whole painting. And I didn't realize that until the very end, which being so careful and not being very confident in your brush strokes, that can lead you to using a lot more time than you want. Of course, when you're out painting, you're not thinking about how long you're taking to paint something. But at least in this challenge that I'm doing here, it's quite important that I know that each brushstroke, each decision that I take is going to take either a bit longer or is going to take away from the end result or is going to give something to the end result. And now I'm adding the chimney. I think I finally understood that I might be out of time soon. So I started speeding up and adding the actual things that will tell you that this house is a house. It's looking pretty dull. It's looking like very monochromatic, and that's fair game. I just couldn't find the way to mix the right orange, and you'll see me now. I think I'm trying to mix a new orange, put a little bit of blue in it just to not make it too bright. I add more yellow, I add a little bit of red. It's it's not going great in that sense. I'm like, okay, what about if I put some green in it? What will happen then? And then I actually decide to use it, and it's still too yellow, but I just go with it. I'm starting to get painfully aware that I'm running out of time. I use it for the door and for the bricks, the brick wall of the house. There was also a fence, but I don't think I even got close enough to paint that in because I was too caught up in the detail. That's a perfect example of why I think I shouldn't have more than 15 minutes to paint. But the one thing I did learn, and I don't know if you noticed, and I'm doing it right now, is that I finally have my rag, and I can just save my poor jeans to not be used as a rag. So at least one thing I'm learning, or I remember to use this time. Now it's almost 2 minutes before the whole video ends, and I don't see a way that I'm gonna be able to finish this painting in that amount of time. At least not to an acceptable stage of painting. I think I realized this now, and I started to frantically add the window just the kind of like reflection, but I'm not adding it like dark enough, or actually the colors surrounding it are not opaque enough, so it's not gonna pop off or pop enough if I add those. And I add the little window on the side, and I'm going to now put the detail that goes around the window frame. I think I'm getting my smaller brush. Yeah, I was getting my smaller brush. I was like, why are you not doing anything? Come on, get on it with it. Now I'm probably gonna be mixing the darker part for the window pane, as I just said. And I think I ran out of time before I actually get to do it. And it's quite sad. And yeah, this is the first time I just didn't really finish the painting before the 15 minutes. Yeah, there it is. Well, that's the finished painting and my dirty water right there. I hope that you learned something from this video. I certainly did. And I did enjoy making this little painting as well. And I'm really enjoying this challenge. It's really bringing exactly what I need and want from it, which is starting to enjoy painting again and finding it very satisfying. Today was another day that I had to paint from indoors. I mean, I'm still quite sick, and I don't want to get so sick that it might get in the way of this project. So I have to be careful. But today I got to paint a view from my kitchen that I always stare at in the mornings, because there's very beautiful light even before the sun starts shining onto this location. It looks very, very nice, and that's kind of what I wanted to do today. I wanted to paint it before the sun came down, but I just thought about it a bit too late, and so I just had to make do with what I had, which is still not half as bad, to be honest. I kind of like the composition, how it's framed between these two buildings that don't offer the same amount of vibrancy that the trees and the snow gets. But at the same time, the color of the buildings is not so horrible or out of place that it really disbalances the whole picture. I actually took the picture that you're seeing there as reference after I was done painting, so the colors are not going to be exactly the same. They're actually going to be softer, but the composition is kind of the same. I also just used my artistic license to remove that car from the composition, but now looking back, I think that it wouldn't be so bad to add it, because there was a lot of space that I didn't know what to do with, and I just tried to fill it up with some things that I know that are there, but I'm not exactly sure what are there. So yeah, now cleaning up the palette from yesterday's mess, and here we go. I feel like today's painting was a bit easier for me to get around and understand what I needed to do first, because it's a view that I stare at a lot. I mean, not only in winter. I mean, now in winter it looks especially beautiful because of the colors, but also throughout the year. I mean, I haven't been living in this house for long. Me and my girlfriend just bought this summer, actually. So I can safely say that I've stared at this at least once a day for 6 months, which is not a bad thing to stare at. Now, I'm trying to learn from the mistakes from previous days, so I'm going a little bit more careful with the application of paint. I'm trying to go over each area or each passing only once, and here you'll see me do a bit of a gradient in the least amount of brush strokes possible. And I am already spotting a mistake that I did right now, and I don't know if you can know what that is. If you have an idea, put it in the comments below. But it is that I did not pre-mix all the colors that I wanted to use in the sky. And one of the biggest troubles I faced today was that shimmering glow of the snow, I could not really get the color right, or at least I couldn't see the color being right in the palette, and when I applied it, I also felt like it was wrong. So that's a big I want to say big mistake, but it is something that I struggle with a lot on this composition and on this painting today. I'm moving on to paint the buildings, and I have to do them a bit like cool, but also a bit brownish, because that's kind of what their color is, and they're getting mostly light from the sky, not really directly from the sun yet. So therefore their color has to be in the cooler side. And I kind of like that contrast of the buildings being cool and the snow bank and the trees on behind being warm. It just balances the painting so well. And if we can find these kinds of compositions or subjects, it makes our life easier as painters. Finding that contrast, like, or should I say natural contrast between things that um, maybe kind of don't belong to each other, but they kind of do. Like there's a certain harmony to them. I always look up to those artists that can paint things that for me they seem so noisy, so mundane, or just so man-made, you can say, and make them look interesting and kind of almost nostalgic. And I never understood how they do that. I think it's just by understanding their subject very well, not really thinking about what emotion they want to bring out from the viewer, but more like their own reaction to the scene. Maybe it brings something that's close to home to them, something that they experienced. Maybe it's somewhere they grew up, or I don't know. I think that having a connection to the place that you're painting, or the object that you're painting, or should I say the subject that you're painting, does give you an unfair advantage on other people that try to paint the same thing, because they don't have that emotion that you have for the place. They don't have that emotional attachment that you do. And that, I think that that's a very big weapon for any artist. If you paint something that is true to you, something that is meaningful to you, your paintings will always come through into saying that. Maybe you don't have the ability to paint as well as you want technique wise, but I can almost guarantee that if you have that emotional connection to your subject, your paintings, even if they're not technically the best, they will still come out very good, and people will just not know how to describe like why your painting is so good, even if the technique or colors or composition is not there. There's still something that you're bringing into the table of like painting that setting, if you know what I mean. Like for me, this kind of setting of snow being hit by bright light, or direct soft light, I should say, and making these very nice saturated blue, magenta shadow color, and the top part, the highlight, is a bit of a, I don't know, it's a orange pinkish glow. Oh, it's just, it really touches something within me that I cannot understand. And I mean, I didn't even grow up in this kind of weather. I did not grow up here in Norway. I'm actually originally from Mexico, which is a very interesting thing to me, that I feel so at home in a place that is so different from where I was actually born. I always say that Norway is my true home. When I moved here, or actually when I traveled through here, it was the first time I really felt like home, and that's always fascinated me. And one thing that I've always wanted to do is paint as much of Norway as I can. I wanted to live in my car, which I did for a month and a half, and drive around and paint the landscapes of Norway. But it was right around when I faced the burnout at work, and that was not possible. So I ended up not doing that. But maybe in the future, who knows? But for now, I'm just gonna stick to places around my home and just really enjoy. I mean, I still enjoy these kinds of views, and now you can see that I'm adding the trees. I'm trying to feather out some of the branches, and now the painting is slowly starting to take shape. Of course, it's still the first mid-tone layer, but at least for me, I was like, okay, here are the trees. That was one of the focuses of today, making those trees glow. And for those trees to glow, I really have to make sure that I use a lot, or yeah, I have to use a lot of paint for the buildings. They have to be darker. If the buildings are not dark enough, those trees are not gonna pop. The sense of light is not gonna be there. So that is one of the main points for this painting. And I did make a big mistake at the end, and you will see that when we get there, and I'll talk about it a little bit. But now I'm just adding the grass, dried grass that also looks orange, but is like this desaturated yellow when you look at it close. That's one of the things that also is very hard. You know in your head what something looks like or what color it is, and therefore you make decisions based off of what you think you know, instead of looking at what you're seeing and understanding what you're seeing. And again, I'm using my trusty nail to pick out some trunks. Sorry for the sidetracking there. It is very interesting how our brain is so good at giving us something that looks like what we thought we knew it was, but it's actually just a representation of the real thing. I mean, if you think about it, when you look outdoors and you try to paint, there's just so much information. If your brain was processing every single detail that we see or that we're able to see, I mean, we would be completely overwhelmed. This is why our eyes have a very wide view, but when you're focused, your focus angle, like area, is only about like 2 degrees of total focus that you can have at one time, whilst your peripheral vision can just take the whole thing in. So as artists, we actually want to exploit the powers of squinting, of being able to see less detail. Of course, it really differs between painter and painter, but everybody uses squinting. I mean, look it up. If you have taken a course in painting or have been following some sort of big master painter, at some point you probably heard about squinting. It is such a good tool, and I don't use it enough, to be honest. I sometimes forget that I can squint. So here, as you can see, learning from the previous day's mistakes, I am focused on making those buildings very, very dark and opaque. So using a lot of paint. And I'm kind of having a proud moment of myself for doing that. Progress is being made by day 5. I mean, probably by day 2 as well, but it wasn't really showing. And I feel like today is one of those days that the painting is already looking like something, you know. I could stop right now and it would be fine. Of course, if you look at it up close, you will see that there's no detail at all, but you can kind of tell what it is. Maybe not exactly what it is because you're not familiar with this view like I am, but if I give you the reference photo and pointed at it, you'll be like, oh yeah, that's nice. I mean, it kind of looks like that, or at least it has the same sensation, or impression of light and a bit of the color as well. And by this point, I remember feeling like I was almost done. Not completely done, but almost done. And you can see me adding a bit of detail here and there. I'm not exactly sure what I was trying to add. I think I was confused. I was like, oh, what do I add to this scene? Because I didn't really want to copy what I was seeing because it was very noisy, and I also didn't know how to simplify it. And that's why there's so much hesitation from my side right now that I don't know what to do. I decide to check the watch and I see that I still have 3 minutes left, and here is where I made the biggest mistake in the whole painting. I could have just quit right here, right now, be done, and be happy. But what did I want to do? I wanted to fix something. And usually in watercolor, that doesn't go well. What I wanted to do is get that glow of the snow that I could see. I mean, I felt like the color was off, or actually, I felt like the brightness of the color that I put was so little that it was not really coming through. And rule number one of watercolor painting: don't add more where you want your highlights to be, one of your lightest values. Don't do it. I don't know why I did this. I thought I could fix it, but at the end of the day I couldn't. And I just seeing this breaks my heart to see how I ruined this painting by doing that. What I could have done instead was enhance the darkness of the shadows. That would have really offset the brightness of the snow, and it would read so much better. So much better than trying to add that glow. I think that even if I didn't have any color on top of the snow, and I would have focused more on the shadow side of the snow, it would have looked so much better. It would actually do exactly the thing that I wanted to do, make that snow pop. And here you're gonna see me try to undo what I did by adding some water and then dabbing the dry paper towel on it in a desperate attempt to undo my big mistake. And I knew it. But you live and you learn. That is the bad thing about watercolor. There's no undos. You just have to paint it again. And I guess that's good, because then you get more time to practice and get better. After this, I called it quits. I was like, yeah, that's enough. If I keep going, I'm just gonna keep making stupid mistakes. So this is gonna be the finished painting for today. And I absolutely loved it, to be honest. I think that this is a milestone. I think that I did a great job at capturing exactly the light that I wanted to capture. So yeah, pretty happy with today. Today I'm feeling a bit better, so I decided to go out to this forest that is very near my home, and I actually found this very nice waterbed. I really felt inspired today to paint by the water, and as you can see, there's a very beautiful view here, and there was also very nice light. And I mean, this subject is very magical. Moving water is something very nice to try to paint. Not the easiest thing to paint, but for some reason today I was very much called to do this, and this composition kind of just worked. Sketching it didn't was very effortless. As you can see, like my pencil never leaves the paper, and I'm just kind of making the connections between each object. And of course there's these rocks that are kind of like islands of their own, but they're all still feel kind of connected in some way. And I just really love the little frost that there is, like right almost by the water surface. That is something that, for example, would really distract me if I was to try to paint it for hours and hours. But since I only have 15 minutes, well, then I can't really focus on that, and I can only focus on how the light is bouncing off the rocks, and also the light that's coming from the sky onto the snow, making it look blue and just full of life and color, really. And one little thing that happened when I just got here, I actually forgot the water container that I usually have, and I almost freaked out. I was like, oh no, like, what am I gonna do now? It's like 40 minutes to walk back home just to get it, and there was not enough light for me to go back and then come back. And fortunately, my girlfriend also joined me on this little walk. She had a kind of like same material case for a little cream that she has, and I just wiped it off and used it. So she saved the day once again. Thank you very much. Today was also very cold, so I was trying to learn from the previous days when it was this cold, and I noticed that on day one, if I painted in the sun, the paint or the water wouldn't actually freeze. Also from previous days, I learned that having brush economy, going through a place once only and not going through it again and again and like re-wetting that place, is probably going to be key here for me to get this painting done and not freeze on me. Right now you see me, I'm putting down the color of the sun that I'm seeing. Remember that the picture that I use as reference is not the same as what I'm seeing in real life. I mean, our eyes can see a lot more color than cameras, and also the cameras are compensating for the light contrast, and our eyes are very good at compensating and adapting. So if you see that the color doesn't look right, that's because that would be an exact representation of the picture. And I'm not trying to copy exactly the color that I see in the picture, but what I'm seeing from life. That's what this whole challenge is about. And now I'm adding the dark side of the snow, and it's a bit of more of a gray magenta color, very desaturated, very light in value as well. Also trying to just put that value once. I think now I'm adding a bit more of a green tone to the shadow side of the snow, because that's actually what I see. And I noticed that I'm trying to not just think what it looks like, but really observe what color is present, and just trying my best to replicate that without actually thinking, oh well, snow in the shadow looks blue, because then that's what our cameras do anyway, and that's not what we want. We want to be able to paint from what we see. So it's a thing that I'm constantly battling against while I'm painting, because it's kind of like our instinct to just try to put everything under a box, try to see the pattern in things, and stop of really thinking of what we're looking at and what we are perceiving. Our brain is really good at just trying to amass things together. And now I'm adding a bit of a magenta pink color that I see in the reflection of the waterbed before the small like waterfall that you can see in the river. This was a bit challenging because it actually looks blue at first sight, but you kind of have to look around and look at all the colors, all the adjacent colors that are there, and don't let your mind trick you. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Our minds just really play tricks on us, and I know I'm probably going on a loop here saying the same thing, but this was what was most present in my mind at this moment. I was trying to think, don't just put color randomly because that's what you think it is, because that's what I have the association to that object. Look at the color that it is. Look, really look. Don't think about what color it is. Look at it. And so I noticed that I started adding a bit what you could call more random colors, but I was starting to see something happening in the paper, like something different from previous days. And I think that this has to do with me learning from the previous days. I mean, watching these videos and then noting down the mistakes that I've done and then taking them to the next day, I think it's doing something to me and my skill, I would say. And now I noticed that some of the shadows were not dark enough, so I go back and I start adding it a little bit more, more into the water. I see like a deep purple kind of color in the water, even though it looked murky and it looked more red. I think I was thinking mostly about the temperature of what I was looking at rather than the actual color that I was perceiving. I mean, this was a very hard thing to do, but I just kept at it. I was like, okay, I'm gonna add it here. If it's present here, it's probably present there, and I would look at my subject and confirm that instead of trying to remember what something looked like. And I think that was very valuable today, and I'm glad that I got to do it. Now I'm mixing the color for the rocks, and I think that today I just kind of understood color in a different way, because I felt so connected to what I was painting somehow. Somehow everything was kind of coming to place. Of course, the color accuracy is not perfect, but at least I was able to make a bit better color decisions. At least I felt that something was clicking in my head, so I just charged on and kept being in the flow. I was so in the flow, I was so still while painting that actually a mouse started to go around me, or not exactly under my feet or anything, but I could see him from my peripheral vision just going around, like, I don't know if he was looking for food or somewhere to hide, or I don't know, but I found out to be very cool that I was just so in the moment, and the mouse just kind of felt like, oh, this dude is not going anywhere and he's not even like paying any attention to me, so I'm kind of safe to just move around him. So that I found quite funny and fun in a way. There was also a little bird that was like bathing in the water that I was looking at this moment, and yeah, he looked super chill as well. Like, he didn't really have a problem with me being there, which I kind of like those moments where other natural creatures just kind of accept your presence and your presence is not like a threat to them. I think that's really beautiful moment. Like, that's when I really, really feel part of nature. And that's something that I haven't felt in a while. And I'm glad that by me doing this project of 100 Days of Landscapes is bringing that feeling back, or at least getting me out there so often that I get to experience those moments again. One thing that I did forget to do as well, it was to get a timer on. The fortunate thing is that I can see what I'm taking a video of, so I can see the timer off the video. So therefore, I was a bit more confident that I was still not over time. I never count the sketch as part of the countdown, but as soon as I started kind of quote unquote stressing about what time it was, I saw that it had been 10 minutes. So I was like, okay, at least I have about 10 minutes, because I don't know exactly how long it took me to sketch, but that's okay. I mean, I never really put a rule or anything about if the sketch is included in the painting. I'm guessing it's not, because it's not painting itself. And yeah, I mean, the sketch is a thing that I could spend a lot of time, but I never have gotten into the habit of taking a really, really long time on a sketch, especially painting outside, because the light moves so fast. And if you really want to capture the impression of something, you shouldn't try to put every single detail of it. You should just have like the suggestions of the feeling of what you're looking at. So, I mean, I guess it works. I mean, I know that I do it because I'm lazy. I'm not saying I do it consciously because of what I'm trying to do, but I think it works. At least it's benefiting me on this project, that's for sure. Now I'm adding the water, which had a very rich color. Like it wasn't one color. When I really looked at it, it was like blue and green and purple and red. It's just so much color was in the water at one time, and I was like, oh, I was starting to get a bit stressed of like, oh, am I gonna have enough time to finish the painting? I mean, there's so much painting decisions, but I was like, just do your best and see what happens. And when I just kind of shut off my mind on thinking, can I get the right color, and I was just trying to look at the subject, look down on my palette while I was and mixing, and then there was something that just kind of clicked in my head without actually me being thinking that, yeah, this is the right color, and I would just put it down. It was something very interesting. I don't think I've ever experienced that, and I guess I never have because I never really tried painting outdoors that for that long, or maybe with this much of a rush, because I think that having this urgency to be done because I'm running out of time is what gave me the ability to experience this, I would say. I don't know if you noticed, but the sun is gone, and thanks to this, something super cool happened, and that is that the paint started freezing again. But at this moment, since I was almost done and I wasn't really going through some of the areas around that were still drying, and I'm adding just the little shadows underneath the rocks to really make the whole painting come together, and you can see what actually this is, because otherwise it looks like just floating stuff everywhere. The texture that the paint got because of it being frozen, it just added exactly what the painting needed, and I was just so happy about this little happy accident, as Bob Ross called them. Like, I mean, this is not even an accident. It's, well, it kind of is, but it isn't, because I was expecting the paint to freeze at some point. I didn't really notice that the sun had gone until I actually noticed that it started freezing. I was like, oh yeah, the sun is not here, so it makes sense because it was still like -4 Celsius. But yeah, I mean, it was super cool to see how this thing that on day 2 didn't really allow me to paint at all, now today, I mean, a few days later, I'm actually using it to my advantage to create a very unique texture in the painting. It's so cool to see how much I've been learning in the very few days that I've started this project. I mean, I really could not be happier. For me, this project is already a success. And if I don't learn anything more from this challenge, but I'm just able to replicate this kind of painting behavior in the future, I mean, I'm happy. I'm really, really happy. This I think is the kind of painting style that I want. It's just being able to get the thing that I see and make it in a simpler way, but it's still captivating, if you know what I mean. Don't get me wrong, I mean, there's still mistakes in the sense of I'm not still using enough paint, but this looks so much better than what I tried to do on day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, even day 5. I mean, day 5, some things started clicking, but I think today has been the day. I'm so proud. I mean, I'm looking at the painting and I'm like, whoa, I really did that? That's crazy, especially when I think about that I did it in such a small amount of time. It's just so bananas, and I'm sorry that I'm just going over and over again. I'm just really excited. It looks really cool, and I hope that if you're watching this, that you're also learning something, or that this is inspiring you to do the same, of at least going outside, not every day, but like every other day, and explore the surroundings of where you live. I honestly thought that for me to be able to get to paint something like this was gonna take at least a month, at least. But this is very close to where I want to be. A little bit maybe more decisive brushstrokes and color decisions, but this one is so good and such a big milestone for myself that I am just so happy. I really can't believe my eyes right now. And this is not to toot my own horn, is not at all. I'm just really surprised with the result of today. I'm not very familiar with waterbeds and rocks. I mean, I usually do rocks very badly, but something just clicked today. I think today was just a really good day. Maybe tomorrow is gonna be a really bad day, and that's gonna be okay. But yeah, I'm just adding a little bit of the green dark moss on the rocks, and that's gonna be it for this painting, I think. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you stuck around till the end of this video to see the finished painting. And I thank my girlfriend that she had this little thing that I could use as a water holder. Otherwise, this painting wouldn't have been possible, and this experience wouldn't have happened. After I woke up, I actually knew exactly where I wanted to go and paint today. Right here, in this very beautiful place. It's actually a quite famous old boathouse that they have here in the Stavanger kommune. And I used to live very close to this place when I first moved to Norway, so it kind of has a special place in my heart. So it's actually not surprising to me that I wanted to come here. I mean, I don't come here often, but I'm very glad that I did come here, because I actually have never come here when there's snow in the ground, so it's kind of my first time seeing it this way, and I wasn't disappointed, to be honest. I'm very glad I came here. And actually a few years ago, this little boathouse actually fell, and it was actually in the news because, I mean, it is an iconic little boathouse in this region. So yeah, it's really nice as well that they reconstructed it and left it just kind of as it was. So today I am so glad that I'm here to paint this. And it was really cold today. I mean, it was actually only -1, but it felt really cold. And I was actually waiting for the sun to come out so I could get some warmth, and also so the paint wouldn't actually freeze when I'm painting. However, I was looking around and I was looking at my subject, and then I realized one thing. The water in the shore is not frozen. The water on the rocks is not frozen, like the ones from yesterday in the lake. I mean, the little stream. The rocks there had a bit of frost around them. And here I couldn't really see that same phenomenon happening. And I was like, that's interesting. So if the sun doesn't come out, then maybe I should use the water of the sea to paint. And I was a bit skeptical about this, because usually you use water with salt to create a different texture and effect on watercolors. I've never actually used it, so I was kind of scared that if I used the water, then the watercolors was going to act very differently. And well, you'll see what happens. But I was very glad that I employed this little technique. It's funny how nature provides the solutions to the problems that we have sometimes. I find that to be quite cool, to be honest. Now I'm gonna start first with the sky, as always. and I'm gonna do a nice gradient because there's a lot of colors in the sky at the moment. There was this very nice cloud with some orange, yellowish, kind of the same glow that the snow had yesterday on the rocks, but a bit more dull because the light is a bit more diffused and it's a bit further away, and there's not a lot of contrast. And I actually didn't even bother cleaning my palette because sometimes that's the way that you can get the colors to communicate a little bit better between them. All that we see in nature always is a lot of grays put in together very subtly and very masterfully, you could say. That's basically what everybody that goes outside and paints is trying to replicate. It's just how nature so perfectly, distributes these seemingly saturated colors and mix them together with their complementaries and their adjacent counterparts in such a way that to our eyes it looks like this is blue, this is pink, this is orange, this is yellow. But there's just so much color within the light that we see in, for example, the sky and the water and everywhere we can see. The colors are just vibrating with each other, and I think that it's just because they're much closer together than we really think. If you were to look at a color wheel and you see that the yellow and the blue, for example, or the the purple are completely opposite to each other, making them complementaries. In nature, you can see them almost together, but they are together kind of in the center. And the way that they are in the center is when they are mixed in with more than just their complementary. So, okay, I'm pretty sure I'm getting very into the nitty gritty of color theory, but my point is that nature just has such a way of teaching us how to use color properly, and this is what I'm beginning to realize or internalize, because I knew it conceptually. I've heard it from other pros say it, but now that I'm out here and actually starting to get the hang of things, at least a little bit, I can see it much better, and I can see it in my paintings as well. Now, I'm moving into putting the little mountains on the back, but then I see that this painting is already too wet, and so I decide to go for a smaller brush that holds a lot less water. That way I know for a fact that I won't be able to hold too much water at once, as well as I can take a lot more paint because this brush is a little bit stiffer. Therefore I can dig in a little bit better to the dried paint, which I have activated with water, which I actually now regret, because you will see in a second that because I use water to reactivate the paint, I actually get the water to freeze, and the rest of the painting that I actually use the salt water from the sea, it doesn't freeze. I mean, I just painted the whole first layer with the water from the sea, and I had no problems, and I still have no problems. I see nothing hinting that there's gonna be freezing in the paper. Now you can see that I'm laying a very thick layer of paint now to imply the mountains on the back, or the little hills. I was actually very cold this day. My left hand was hurting while holding the easel or my painting. I have to find a way to be able to have my easel and also mount the phone on top so I can keep making these videos in this format so you guys can see what I'm doing while I'm painting. But yeah, there was something that today just felt much colder. Maybe it's because I'm right beside the water, so it's a bit more humid. Therefore, it feels a little bit more intense on the exposed skin. But yeah, I mean, this is the joy of painting outside. I did sign up for this project, and so far I'm loving it, to be honest. Something that I was talking with my mother the other day is that I was telling her about this project, and she said, like, yeah, I mean, I can see that you're getting a lot of energy out of it, and it sounds amazing. And it's also very good because you're gonna be a lot more in touch with nature, and that's only gonna bring you good things. Because, I mean, being around nature for at least 30 minutes, which is basically takes me to make these videos, like getting to the location, setting up, and then shooting the video, then getting ready to leave. So yeah, I mean, in Japan they have this thing called forest bathing, I think it's called, and it's just about like going into forest for like 20 minutes, and they say that it has a lot of good um, things that happen from doing that. And I think that ever since I started this project, I have been feeling a bit happier, even though that's not like why I was doing it. But maybe that's why. Maybe I'm just really excited because I'm painting again every day and learning. I think that's a big one for me. If I feel like I'm learning every day, like progressing every day, oof, that's a good feeling. But marry that with painting and nature, which are two things that I love a lot, well, I think it's the recipe for happiness from my side. Now, I'm moving so quickly that I actually forgot to add two little things to make the further water look like water. And that's just a bit of a layer of like a blue because there was some wind blowing. Therefore, the distant hill wasn't really reflecting in the water as it would if it was still. So I forgot to add that. I mean, I could have added the reflection of the hills as well, but I also forgot to do that. I was just really cold in my left hand, and it was starting to cramp. Not about now, but it did start cramping at some point. So I was just trying to move as fast as I could, as you can see. Now I'm moving to make the sand. Oh no, I'm doing the reflection. Yeah, of course. This is when I thought, oh yeah, that's what I forgot for this. Like, suddenly I felt like this wasn't really working. And I'm like, huh, it's missing something. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's the reflection, of course. So when we're painting reflections, we don't want to paint exactly the shape that we're seeing. We want to distort it a bit, especially if the reflection is on a body of water like it is right now. In the picture is completely still, but I personally like it when the reflections are a bit distorted, because it implies movement of the water. And yeah, I mean, it's a stylistic choice, to be honest. And I could also added a bit more movement in the water, like getting a bit of waves going. There was no waves, but I don't know, it's some elements that adds some niceness to the landscape. Like adding movement to your painting always will bring a little bit more life to it. At least that's what I've heard. But I also agree, I tend to want to add those things anyway. And a lot of the things that I'm talking about right now is things that I've heard from other people on YouTube, or books that I've read, or courses that I've taken. None of the information that I'm saying is me knowing everything. It's just me sharing what I know. For those of you that maybe are watching these videos to learn how to paint better, and for those who are not interested in learning to paint better and are just watching because this might be calming, then I'm sorry to bore you with all the painting jargon and details. Maybe it is different. Maybe it is interesting. You'll let me know in the comments below anyway. I know that for a fact. Now, something I forgot to point out is that the water on the right side, on the right bottom mixing area, you can see that there's a little bit of frost. Not too much. It's very small, like kind of pebbles or slush, and that's where the water I used from a little spray bottle to activate the paints is. But everything else, you can see that the paint has just moved as normal, like as if it was like a warm day. And I found that to be very interesting, that salt water, I completely forgot that salt water can withstand a bit more of the cold, and I'm kind of happy that I was able to use some for today, because I think if I would have painted anywhere else and there was no sun, there's no way that I would have had a successful session, you could say, because of the lack of equipment, you could say. Also, one thing that I wanted to mention is that I know that the video would be nicer if I had a song playing in the background, maybe. But it is very hard to find a song that is 15 to 20 minutes long and that fits the mood of the painting. I am looking for some people to try to make me a score, a very simple score, just of something kind of in the background, kind of like the intro and outro that I have right now. It just kind of follows the same mood of like, this is a new day, it's a new adventure, but everything is calm and nice. But yeah, I mean, I am looking into it. I'm sorry if this video is too boring without the music, but I'm working on it. And yeah, I just don't want to get copyrighted. We are approaching the end of the painting. I'm trying to look around and see what details are missing. I also did forget that when the hills were almost about dry, I wanted to use my trusty nail to scratch some distant snow plains. So now I'm trying to use some water and lift some of the paint, because it's still kind of wet, but not wet enough for me to lift it with my nail. And there I am trying to do that. Details are important, but often the most important details are those that we leave out and we do not put in the painting. Because putting too many details, depending on the style that you're going for, it can lead to disbalance. And so I am calling it a day. I don't think that I want to do anything else with this painting. So the last thing to do is to just sign it. I had a lot of fun today and I really like this place. It's a nice memory from when I first came to Norway. And I hope that you liked this video and you enjoyed watching me paint this little place and also hear the story behind it. Which wasn't a very big story, but it was a story nonetheless. Today I decided to stay close to home, and this is a view that I get from my house, but it's a bit harder to see, so I decided to come to this hill and try to paint it. It is cold today as well, so of course I was trying to paint in the sun so the paint and the water wouldn't freeze. However, I did put some salt on the water that I'm using, and actually it worked. It worked that the paint wasn't freezing. However, I think that by adding the salt, the granulation of the paint is a little bit more accentuated. And I mean, I love granulation. It's nothing that I'm not a fan of. So maybe that's something that I'm gonna keep doing regardless if it's cold or not. But so far I like the effect that I'm getting from the salt in the water. It could maybe not be because of it, so I have to test it when it's warmer outside, or I could do it indoors. But I mean, right now, if it helps me to keep this project alive, I'm just gonna do it. I'm not gonna fuss too much about it. Now, something that I'm really thinking about is that I kind of want to have a little table just so that I don't have to put things in the floor. But of course, that will just make me have to carry more things, and it could make things a little bit more complicated. So we'll see. Now I'm just cleaning my palette because I think that the paints were still active from yesterday, and I think because of the salt they just stay activated much longer, so I had to wipe it off with my rag that I have. And I noticed also that I accidentally stained the paper with my glove as you can see now. And I'm like, oh, okay, then I have to be careful because I also stained a little bit the part of the paper where I was about to paint. So yeah, I mean, getting ready, also I could feel that it was a bit colder today. It technically isn't, like the numbers don't say it's colder, but I just felt it was very, very cold. My hands or my fingers were feeling it straight away. So I was like, oh, maybe it's gonna just freeze the paint right away, or maybe it's not. I'm hoping that the water with salt will help, and it did. I'm not gonna hang you on to till the end of the video for you to find out. It did hang on, but I did struggle with the cold today, and you will see that I'm starting to get sort of a good workflow when I'm outside. I'm still kind of following the same workflow I always have. However, what I think is working a bit better now is that I am a bit more confident in my brushstrokes, and so I don't think about too much where I'm putting what. Is more about, this is what I need to do. I'm gonna do it fast because one, it's cold, and two, I just need to move faster because the light moves fast. Of course, maybe not so much here in Norway and in winter because the sun stays so low, but I think it's a good thing to stay in the habit of moving fast while painting, especially with watercolor. So now I'm just gonna start adding the sky, which in the picture looks almost blue. But one thing that I learned from the book called Color Relativity, I don't remember the name of the author, or at least not her last name. I always struggle with her last name. Cami. She talks about looking at the colors in terms of their, I think it's secondaries instead of the primaries. So if something looks blue, instead of thinking about it, does it look blue? Is it a cool blue or a warm blue? Think about it as in, is it a blue that is closer to purple or magenta, or is it a blue that is closer to green or yellow, you know? So that has really helped me to judge the colors better, and especially with what I've been saying, that colors out in nature are basically tertiary. So that basically means that all three primary colors are mixed together. So by thinking in secondaries instead of primaries, I think we are able to make a better judgment out of the colors that we see. And I painted a banana, like still life banana, with these principles that Cami Medlink, I really don't remember her last name. I'm sorry, Cami. But I was really impressed to see that my color accuracy or perception, or actually representation of color in the painting, was much better when I thought about it that way. And I don't know if anybody else has presented this kind of theory of color in such a way. Maybe somebody has, but at least Cami's book was very helpful, and I hope that she gets the credit that she deserves, because it was a really, really nice book. I still haven't finished it. I mean, color is something that we can always be learning, but I just wanted to get the basic gist of what she's going for, and then just try to run with that and use it in practice. Like here, I mean, I started using it because I started seeing the relationship between what I was seeing in real life and also what I know conceptually from books like this one. And that's something that I feel like a lot of the things that I've learned from books are starting to kind of come together, because most of those are based off of experience of painting outdoors, or I don't know, they could be just a lot of experience painting, whether it is indoors or outdoors. And yeah, there's something that's just clicking in my head from all the things that I've read and heard and all the videos in YouTube that I watched. It feels like they're all just coming together now. I was trying to paint not on direct sunlight, just so you guys could see what I was painting a little bit better. But I was struggling a bit to keep the sketchbook in an angle that wouldn't happen. And also the paper started buckling, so the light that is hitting the notebook is mostly from the underside as well. So yeah, the joys of painting outdoors. It's a constant struggle, but it's still fun. Today I actually rushed through the painting process because of what I said at the beginning. It was really cold. Now I was trying to add a darker tone of like some trees, and yeah, I was just rushing because it was really painful. Like my index finger and my right hand for some reason was hurting a lot, and it's weird because I didn't experience this in previous days. But yeah, I mean, every day is a different day, right? So I just had to adapt, and I just like, okay, I'm not gonna stay here for a very long time. But this led me to actually paint a lot faster, a lot more decisive, not think things too much, and just go with it, you know? And it was actually pretty impressive to see the result, because even though I reduced my painting time by a lot, I still was able to paint just as well in a way. But yeah, I did forget to sign the date and the number on this painting while I was out there. I was just so cold, and I really needed my finger to have some sort of sensation again. So yeah, that was not scary, but like a bit uncomfortable. Now I'm adding a bit of detail on the back mountain that you can see in the reference picture, and I'm adding things here and there, not so much detail, because I'm just rushing to try to be done and go back inside, or at least put my right hand in my pocket. But yeah, putting some trees that needed to be darker, not as dark as you can see them in the picture, but a little bit darker. I even forgot that I have a smaller brush that I could use like yesterday to have like more opaque, or be able to pull a lot more paint from the wells. But we live and we learn, and I was kind of like in survival mode. Now I think it's just about here that I'm like just adding a little bit of the shine of the near grasses, the yellow kind of glow, and then I just add a bit of the blue that is reflecting from the sky on the grass. And then I'm like, okay, no, I'm done. I was looking at it, I'm like, yes, I'm gonna add something else. And then I'm like, nah, I'm done. My hand is just hurting. Today, just like yesterday, I already knew where I wanted to paint and what I wanted to paint, which was rocks, but covered in snow. However, today was a little bit more windy than I expected, but that didn't stop me because I thought that because it was above 0 degrees Celsius, that it wasn't gonna be such a big problem. And I mean, I have been in -9 weather and like at least under -5 for the past few days, and it hasn't been this bad. It hasn't been this painful to paint outside. And today I did struggle. I did struggle to the point where I didn't really finish the painting. I'm sorry for the spoilers, but everything just kind of reflected in my painting. Maybe this is the lesson today. Like, you don't have to paint every day, or at least be smart about the battles that you want to win or go through, because I'm sure that that British painter who took a year to accomplish that painting didn't go in very, very cold weather where he couldn't really feel his hands, or that he couldn't really focus on the painting itself because it was that cold. And that was one of those days today. I was just trying to push past the paint and trying to paint the idea that I had today. I really wanted to paint negatively. I wanted to just paint the contour of the things rather than the thing themselves. And that you often get with when you paint snow. Snow is one of the most beautiful things to paint because you literally paint around it. You don't really paint the snow itself. And I thought that the rocks that I was showing here were the perfect subject for that. And I did start well. I did have a good gray and a bit of cool gray going, perfect for this snow. But the pain of the cold started setting in really quickly, and you might see it very soon when I start to like really to make bad decisions. For example, now I'm trying to add a little bit darker value of green, which I could have really just lived without because it didn't really add anything to the painting. And so I'm right now just grabbing my other brush, thinking that this one that I'm using at the moment might not be a good idea because it's taking too much paint. And I remember that right now my hands were really cold and my fingertips, and I was really frustrated that there was too much water in the palette and I couldn't really find a place to have just a dry surface, so I could layer on top much thicker paint to be able to control a bit better the fact that the paper is really wet and it's not gonna dry anytime soon. However, the paper did dry in the bottom part, but not on the part where I'm right now trying to put some distant rocks in, because I just went over that layer, or that section of the paper. If I would have just left it alone, I could have just gone in and this part wouldn't have gone wrong, which was the first part where I started to be like, oh, this is not going well. And I was trying to turn it around, but it was just not going my way. But I was like, you know what, you're here, you can do this. Just try to think about what you need to do next. And I started going back to the old habits, to trying to paint from what I know and what I know in my head to be true, instead of watching what is exactly in front of me. So then you're gonna see that a lot of my color decisions are a bit off. None of the shapes are really descriptive of what I'm trying to paint. It's only really known to me what I did today because I knew the subject. But if you didn't know what I was painting and you just looked at what I was doing, you would be like, he's just kind of scribbling marks of paint in the paper, not really having any plan, which was quite true. I was not having a plan because I was trying to make things up as I was going instead of just looking and taking a little bit more time to really see what was in front of me, to try to recognize the patterns of the rocks in front of me, rather than just quote unquote randomly placing them. There's no random placement when it comes to the human mind. I mean, we place things a lot more systematically than we like to believe. And this is exactly what was happening here. I was trying to arrange things in a way that they will look like rocks, instead of just looking at the rocks and how they actually look in the scenario that I am in at this moment. And yeah, I mean, I think most of the thing was that it was really cold and I just defaulted onto what I needed to not think too much. And it was kind of like mostly a survival instinct kind of moment where I knew that if I finished this painting quickly, then I could just go back to the warmth of the indoors, you know. But I was not happy that I just kind of ran away from this challenge. I mean, today's challenge. I mean, I don't like that the elements won today, but it is what it is. And I was very excited to talk about the negative painting technique, which I really enjoy, which is the one that I use mainly for when I paint and when I've painted snow, because as I said before, you don't really paint snow. Snow paints itself around the things that you're actually painting. For example, the rocks. I am just placing the dark side or the dark faces of the rocks, and therefore implying that the white around it is just snow. Of course, I didn't get to add a little bit of shadow to the rocks, I mean the snow itself, and that's because I was really rushing and I couldn't stand it anymore. But also, this is the other thing that I said, like I wasn't really looking because really there was no shadow. It's a overcast day. I thought that yesterday was gonna be the fastest painting I've ever done outdoors, but no, this one definitely is. But the difference is that at least yesterday there was a finished painting. Here it just looks like a bunch of random marks. And even when I was walking back home, there was this guy that looked at me and said, "Hey, what were you doing over there?" I'm like, "Well, I was painting." He's like, "Oh, what were you painting?" I'm like, "Rocks." He looked at me weird, and it looked like he wanted to know what I was painting, but I didn't give him the chance to see it because it looked like a whole lot of nothing. But I could have shown him like previous days, instead of just shy away from showing him a failed attempt. Remember that our failed attempts are also part of our progress, and therefore this is gonna be a day that I will remember and I will learn from. I thought that today was going to be yet another beautiful morning in my house, just getting one more day of painting done. But it wasn't such a morning. It was much better than that. You see, as I'm sketching out the view that I wanted to paint today, I'm not really aware of the fact of what kind of day it's gonna be. I'm just concerned with the details that I see in the landscape. And as well, I am thinking about the fact that the light hitting my sketchbook is so faint, so uneven that it's distracting me from my sketch. But I just move on and get the sketch done first. So before I start painting, I move to a bit better light that won't cast a shadow as I paint, light that will help me see what I want to put down in the paper, light that will help me see something that I've been waiting to see for a long time. And more than seeing, I want to feel it. I want to feel that sensation that I have thought I lost. The morning here in Norway are quite dark. It's about 8:30 in the morning and there's still no sign of the sun coming out. It's an overcast day, so that's not likely to happen. But this doesn't matter to me because the scene is still beautiful. It's still full of color. And you might not be able to see, but this first layer has a lot of color in it. A lot of the color that I see in the landscape at this moment. And I try to imbue that color on the paper. And as I do this, that feeling that I've been missing starts awakening. I don't know exactly what it is. I'm not sure of it as I'm painting. I only understand the feeling once I'm done. We have all experienced this feeling. It's not unique to me, and it's not unique to you either. It's something that we all humans have and experience at least once in our lifetime. Some more than others, and that has to do with being able to listen and feel this feeling. But in today's age, it is very easy to tune out this feeling. It's very easy to get distracted and get completely absorbed in what we see and forget that we can feel. As I painted this cloud in the sky, a sudden feeling of remorse and regret from placing such a dark value lingers over me. For one moment, I lose the feeling itself, and in a blink of an eye, I keep painting and the feeling is back. Some people call this feeling flow, some people call this focus, others call it attention. In religion, some people call it God or the divine. I simply call it connection. Not to say that all of the other terms are wrong, but for me, this is what rings most true to my life experience. Especially in this moment as I'm painting, the feeling of connection to the subject is crucial for an artist, at least for me in my opinion, to create good art. Because if we feel it while we're painting, the viewer will feel it too. It is a sort of unspoken energy, one that can be recognized by any of us. And any of us, I mean humans. And a great example of this energy is when a child draws a picture of their mom and dad. They might be stick figures, they might not look like the parents, but the feeling that the kids experienced while creating this portrait of their parents can still be felt and understood by the parents. Most things that kids make are things that we treasure. Their laugh, their dancing, their unique way of expression. It comes from the essence of being human. As I attempt to copy what nature has created so perfectly, I have to realize that I'll never do as good of a job as nature. However, what I can do myself is imbue this landscape with my feelings, my reactions, and present it as my own creation of this landscape, not as a replica of what nature has created, but as something that gained my attention and I connected with. You probably have heard before that you should paint what you love. You should paint what attracts you and never try to copy. Copying is not a bad thing as long as you do it knowing that it is not yours and it'll never be yours. The only thing that will be yours is your decisions on the canvas, your mistakes, and your successes, of course. When I woke up and when I thought that I was gonna paint today, I could have never imagined that this was gonna be such a special painting. That this moment in time, these few minutes, were going to remind me of who I am and why I'm doing this. In a way, this painting gave me freedom. It gave me a new and a forgotten perspective in life. Something that I've always known it was there, but I could never really truly grasp. And I'm sorry if I'm rambling and this is not interesting to you, but if you are still here and listening to my words, I urge you to go outside and find that of which you most feel connected to, that thing that you can't help but do. We're living today in a world that values the invaluable, a world that cannot stop and look at a painting or a moment or landscape for 1 second because it is too busy doing and listening and trying and just doing. And I have fallen into that trap. That's why I've lost the connection with that which made me so happy. And this happiness, or this sort of happiness, comes from a place where there's no requirements. It is not the fact that I finished this painting and I was satisfied with what came out of it. It's not that I take another day in this project. This feeling of happiness, it comes from an alignment with the thing that you're meant to do in this world, the language that you speak, and I don't mean the literal language of English or Spanish or French or whatever. I mean the language that is unique to you. Visual, words, music, math, science, acting, navigating, driving, sewing, whatever your true language is, you must speak it more often. We have to create space for our language to develop and for our language to touch other people. And because this language is unique to us, they might not understand it at first, and that's okay. The only thing that is meant to happen is for you to speak and share that language with other people. That's where this amazing feeling of connection with what you do comes from. This is where the true happiness lies. This is where nirvana lies. This is where everything that we want in life exists. And it exists in one single moment. It is not about a destination. It just exists. So this is a reminder for anybody like me that had lost their path, that had lost their ability to listen to that voice and that connection to the thing or the language that you best speak, to just come back home. Come back to that which is true to you, and it will change you in ways that you could only have dreamed of, and then some. By us being ourselves, we bring so much good into this world, more than we could ever even think possible. The thing is, this change will come indirectly. It's not like you going out and donating to charity. It is the energy that flows through you listening and doing to what you want to do, that will help immensely everybody that surrounds you. There is a chance that you won't see its effects. There is a chance that you won't hear about it from other people. But that is not your concern. You're not trying to do this for that. You're only doing and listening and connecting to your true self, because that is what you're here to do. And as soon as you do it, it's like everything around you changes. And I should say, I'm sorry. I don't want to make you feel scared for wanting those things. And by wanting those things, I mean wanting to improve people's lives and hoping that your good energy does good in the world. I don't want you to feel afraid of that. Because believe me, if you are aligned with yourself and doing what you're meant to do, it is inevitable that those things will happen. And you will not even think about trying to change someone else's lives, because you're so focused on doing what you love that everything around you starts shifting. Today I thought it was gonna be one regular beautiful morning, but it turned out to be a morning that for the first time in my life probably, I saw myself coming through my paintings. For the first time I felt free and not a slave to what I saw in the landscape. I was able to just inject a part of myself into this picture, and that is something beautiful that I've never been able to see before. I'll see you tomorrow.